It is a distinct pleasure to share with all of you, our listeners, this special episode which was recorded live at the 3rd Annual Jackson Hole Forum, which we hosted this past July. We had 4 notable speakers on the first panel, and I moderated the conversation. The main theme for the panel was the investor's perspective on AI and technology. Many of the questions came from audience members. For a bit of background, each year, 30 participants are selected for the Jackson Hole Forum. Roughly half are leading growth investors, while the other half are accomplished founders and CEOs. Many attendees were attending for their second or third time. In this discussion, I was joined by Corey LoPrete, Managing Director and Head of Private Equity Portfolio Management at GCM Grosvenor, Ashu Agrawal, Managing Director at TA Associates, Alex Fisher, Managing Director and Co-Head of Technology and Government at Madison Dearborn Partners, and Don Vu, AI and Data Advisor at ICONIQ Growth. Our conversation covered a broad set of topics, from how they think about AI and the influence it has on the opportunities they pursue, to where the most disruption may happen, to pricing risk and exit multiples and beyond. We also talked about what it takes to build a world-class investment firm. I am your host, RJ Lumba. We hope you enjoy the show. If you like the episode, click to follow.
RJ Lumba is the managing partner of GrowthCap and the executive chairman of Market Insight Media. He is the host of Growth Investor, a podcast featuring today's best investors, executives, and founders. In the minutes ahead, we'll uncover insights and strategies for accelerating growth and succeeding in business.
I think we're going to kick off. We'll probably try to do this pretty efficiently, but yet in an engaging manner because it gets pretty hot. We're used to this 3rd year running. So first off, thanks everyone for making the trip, and I'm very happy to have you all here. I always do a mention of how this group comes together. We take some time to assemble the group. The hardest part is the curation. I was mentioning here, we have to have at least 2 Olympians, so thank you. Paul's the other one. It's a combination of founders, CEOs, and investors. The other element that overlaps is there's some affinity for the outdoors or athletic activities. And what we found is I never expected people to keep coming back, but they do. And I'm delighted. I think Jim Donnelly, 3rd year in a row, Bill Snyder, 3rd year in a row. There's a bunch of people here, 2nd time in a row. So hopefully we convert everyone over. But let me get started with the first panel. This is focused on investor perspectives related to technology and AI investing. This is a great panel we've assembled. Corey LoPrete, who we were just talking about, we met when I was 18 years old. We went to UVA together. We were roommates at one point. And it's always wonderful to see great things happen to great people. He's at a great firm in a good position, and we'll have them do their own intros. Don Vu, also UVA. We met early on. He's doing a lot of work in AI. Ashu, thank you so much for making the trip. We love our relationship with TA, and we always try to have you at our events. And Alex, great to see you come back. You're one of the second timers. Great to have you here. So what we'll do is we'll just do quick intros. I think it's good to hear directly from yourselves. We'll go down the line, just introduce yourselves, like your role at the firm and the types of investment opportunities you focus on.
Sure, I'll start. Corey LoPrete, as RJ suggested. As I was saying before, I'll share stories if you get a few drinks in me later on of RJ's younger years. But I'm at GCM Grosvenor. I run portfolio management for our private equity division. We're a $91 billion alts firm investing across all alts, anything from hedge funds to private equity, obviously, and then infrastructure and real estate. I've worn a lot of different hats in my time there. I took over portfolio management in, I think it was 2018 when I started running that. We got bought out of Credit Suisse in the end of 2013 when they were getting rid of all of their private equity businesses due to Volcker rule concerns. And so I was COO of that business when we came over. And I try not to tell people anymore, but I am still a lawyer by training, though mostly recovered at this point.
Ashu?
Hello, Ashu Agrawal. I'm a partner at TA, based in our Silicon Valley office. I wear 3 hats at TA. I lead a number of our tech investments, serve on the firm's core investment committees, so as part of that, helping with underwriting across sectors, across geographies, and then also been leading a number of our AI initiatives cross-functionally. So underwriting, portfolio management, and internally how we think about AI. TA, for those of you who don't know, we are a global growth-focused private equity firm. The firm has raised about $65 billion in capital since 1968 when it was founded. We are a global firm, so 3 offices in North America, then London, Mumbai, Hong Kong. And we invest in growing and profitable companies. So that's on multiple sectors, so tech, healthcare, financial services, and business services.
Excellent.
Great. Looking forward to meeting all of you. Alex Fisher. I'm a managing director and co-lead our technology and government team at Madison Dearborn Partners. So we are a private equity firm based in Chicago. We've just got 1 office in Chicago. Been around since the early 90s. We've raised about $30 billion of capital in aggregate. We're currently investing out of our 9th fund. We've got 3 different industry teams at the firm. We've got a healthcare team, financial services team, and then the team that I co-lead is technology and government. And really, where we're focused is at the intersection of public sector and technology. So we're, heavily focused on tech companies, but that serve, government, federal government, state and local government, education, we consider in, the public sector. So really kind of public sector, highly regulated industries. I joined the firm in 2013, so about 13 years ago. In addition to co-leading that team, similarly, I also am helping lead our AI initiatives across the firm, mostly internal, actually. We have a kind of portfolio company, which I'm sure we'll get into, focus as well, but I'm helping lead our internal use of AI, which we've got some folks that love it and adopt it, and we've got others that need a little bit of a push. So we're trying ourselves to adopt all the technology internally at MDP as well.
Hey guys, I'm Don Vu. I'm an AI and data advisor for ICONIQ Growth. ICONIQ Growth is the venture and growth arm of ICONIQ Capital, roughly $100 billion in AUM. I'm actually not an investor, I'm actually an operator. So I've been in the data and AI space doing delivery, both for enterprises, but also kind of growth stage and startups. I started MLB Advanced Media, the digital arm of Major League Baseball. They white labeled their video streaming platform, sold it to Disney, and it's the back end of Disney Plus now. That was a fun and wild ride. And then I ended up pivoting and going to traditional enterprise. I've been a CDAO for Chief Data Analytics Officer for 2 Fortune 100 insurance companies, Northwestern Mutual and most recently New York Life. But it's been really fun to also engage with Silicon Valley and with the venture side of the world, and had a great relationship with ICONIQ. And most of what I do is try to get perspective on what's going on the ground in enterprises with respect to adoption, what are the headwinds with respect to go-to-market, product market fit. But it gives me a really fun perspective to see both startups and investors, as well as what's going on the ground and all the headwinds with things like regulatory considerations and things of that nature, but a lot of fun.
Awesome. And Don and I happened to land at the same time yesterday, so we went on a 2-hour hike and we were talking about AI. He said something that really caught my attention. He when you said that in the future, and probably not too distant future, AI is going to be a side thought because it's going to be integrated into almost every technology. You're not going to be talking about the AI product. It's just going to be baked in. Can you kind of share a little bit more about that?
And just some nuance to that. I feel like AI is certainly like a technology and development like nothing that we've ever seen before. But I think there are some similarities. I often say that history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. And just as initially people had like an internet strategy and people had like a mobile strategy, those things like tend to fall into the background as it permeates throughout the business, and they do things like change workflows and ways of working. I think AI is certainly different in a lot of different ways and unlocks new capabilities, but I think some aspects of AI will become invisible. Because if you think about like your iPhone, right? Currently, you can do things like ask your iPhone or search within your photo album for like dogs, and you can search for things like my son's name or my daughter's name. And it uses image recognition and computer vision to actually work through your actual photos. But we don't think of that as AI anymore. That's just like a feature of like the Photos app. Now that's not going to be universal. I think there's certain things that are just like a next level capability that perhaps we might have some distinction. But I do think more often than not, we will see over time it kind of like fades into and gets absorbed into other things.
And Corey, when we were talking maybe like a month ago, you had talked about like the exposure you're actually like building up in AI and your different initiatives. Can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, I guess I didn't touch on what we're doing from an AI perspective, and we've approached it. We're more of a middle market buyout investor. We do some growth, but we generally stay away from venture. So we've been dipping our toe into the AI world, and we've started with the stuff that probably we thought was the lowest hanging fruit, invested in the foundation models, Anthropic with Don's firm. Certainly, we've invested in OpenAI, and we've, again, done some of the chip makers, but have largely tried to stick to stuff where we thought, hey, these are going to be the clear winners. They have the highest growth potential right now with the lowest risk, given kind of what our clients are looking for us to invest in. But we have started to do more of it across our multi-asset class book. We actually see a lot of the deal flow. It's kind of interesting the way our business has grown. We certainly get deal flow from our private equity partners and our growth partners, but we also have a big hedge fund business, and a lot of the big hedge funds, D1 Capital is one of them, Coatue kind of straddles, I suppose, but they started investing in these pre-IPO stocks years ago, so we're seeing really interesting deal flow from that avenue, and because they know us from other parts of our business, we've been able to start to source some really interesting opportunities. And most recently, we actually just launched our first AI-focused product. It's a publicly listed vehicle in Australia that is designed to give effectively retail investors who don't have access to the typically the various pre-IPO stocks, some access to it in an appropriately institutional diversified way. Now, some of it we just can't access, obviously, but some we can get through, say, an investment in ICONIQ's fund, and we will do some of it through fund investing or where we can source interesting opportunities across other parts of the AI spectrum, starting with, again, the stuff that feels less like venture and is a little bit more further along in its growth potential.
And Ashu and Alex, you both deal a lot with AI. Maybe we'll go a next layer into what you're looking to invest in this realm of AI.
Yeah, I'm happy to start. I mean, for us, we're kind of squarely middle market private equity. Our team on technology government, we skew a little bit smaller, so we kind of are doing some growthier deals, a lot of founder-owned deals. But I would say we're squarely in the kind of buyout phase, and so we have not, spent any time, looking at the LLMs and kind of the base models and the things like that. I don't want to call them speculative, but our bets are just a little bit different in terms of we're not as well positioned to kind of make multiple bets and kind of pick which one of those is going to be a winner. And the same goes with our portfolio. We're kind of keeping them open-minded in terms of, hey, if we need to switch models or one's better for a certain subsector of technology, we want to be open to that. So we have not spent a lot of time in kind of the base models. And so where we've been investing in AI, and we still continue to invest in technology companies that have a lot of conviction in technology companies, are those that we feel can leverage this AI technology to kind of further their differentiation, versus be disrupted, right? So I think what AI has done, and from our investment perspective, has really forced us to take a step back and understand who is more insulated from the risk of just being displaced by AI. And I mentioned in the intro, we're really investing in public sector technology, and better be lucky than good. We've been doing that for 15 years, but we feel like that is very insulated just given the regulatory, the compliance aspect. You need past performance when you're working with the government. They're not just going to use an upstart company and trust them with all of that data. And so really where we're focused is heavily investing in AI, but it's really building products and services using the kind of base models in AI, incorporating those into our technology and software businesses, and less so the actual kind of AI LLMs and kind of base models themselves.
Yeah, I think our approach is very similar because we are only investing in growing and profitable businesses. A lot of the AI native companies are too early for us. So most of our AI efforts, really, if you think about our business, are focused around, from an underwriting perspective, thinking about, similar to what Alex said, how is AI going to impact existing businesses within the tech space, within the healthcare space, within the business services space, and really how are they incorporating AI both on the product solution side as well as operation side, and really trying to invest in companies that are AI forward. And so AI is a part of the story, but it's not the only part of the story. From an existing portfolio perspective, obviously we have 150 companies that we have already invested in. So there the effort is really trying to figure out which of our companies are more susceptible to disruption, where they are on the journey, the AI maturity journey, and then helping them along that. And then lastly, incorporating AI into our internal workflows, given we have a sourcing engine which calls on 20,000 companies a year. We meet with 10,000 companies a year. We are for the 20 platform investments that we are making. So just that managing that funnel, how do we use AI in that? How do we use AI on the deal diligence and that process more efficient? So that's how we are thinking of AI and spending time in AI. And really goes back to what Don said. I think ultimately the idea is that AI will be omnipresent, and just getting our arms around AI and understanding what it's bringing so that all business models that are affected will eventually be affected, we understand what the implications are.
I have a whole long list of questions, but I thought I'd mix it up because I was going to save all the Q&A for the back end. But I'm wondering if anyone has a question related to what we talked about, or another question related to AI.
I maybe just in the spirit of the last two comments, I'd be interested to hear, what are the business models that you guys are looking at that you're like, oh my gosh, these are going to be highly disrupted and I'm staying away from this space? And which are the ones that you're like really leaning into because you see them as defensible?
Yeah. I'm happy to start with it. I mean, I think the ones that we're looking at that we say, geez, this could really be disrupted. One, I'd say typically, not all, but have a horizontal focus. So they don't have kind of a level of expertise in a particular industry or kind of subsector, kind of that data advantage that I talked about, or kind of compliance with, whether it's government, regulated industries, things like that. So I think one is kind of some of these software solutions that were kind of all things to all people. Right. And then I think two, the ones that are more susceptible, they're not as integrated into kind of the workflow and system of record of a business. And so it might be a piece of technology or software that sat in the back office that if you asked any employee of that company, they didn't even know they had it, right? The CTO knew they had it. The CISO, might have known they had it because they were assessing the security posture of that technology or something like that. But it wasn't really in the daily workflow and kind of wasn't acting as a system of record for the company. So the ones that were in our portfolio, but also the new, investment opportunities that we're looking at, that we're getting more comfortable around, really have, kind of that differentiation of, they're going to build agents on top that automate things, but at the end of the day, they're acting as kind of a core system of record. Employees are kind of logging into those systems and those platforms every day. The more regulated and kind of complex those workflows are, the better. So I think to me, it kind of all comes down to that, but really finding things that are truly mission critical. And then I would say too, we've never shied away from a mix of software and services, or a mix of software and hardware, right? And so we've a long time in our portfolio had companies that some investors said, oh, we don't want to touch that because it's not 100% pure software or SaaS, right? Most of the things in our portfolio today are not. And that actually has proven to be an advantage when you think about the disruption of AI, because it's not going to do everything in most cases. And so those mixed business models are also something that we continue to look for and appreciate the moat that they have. And it's just a little bit harder to disrupt.
Yeah, again, very similar. We have come up with a framework, not too dissimilar from number of frameworks you see that, how do we think about AI disruption, and thinking about data integration, thinking about unique data assets that the company has, really thinking about regulated industries, deterministic workflows where you have to really know what's happening. And really we think about it as a system of record, system of logic, and then just a workflow layer. And really the more on top you are, the more susceptible to disruption you are, and the more you're vertically integrated across those, the more you can frankly incorporate AI and benefit from what's happening. So that's how we are thinking about it.
Yeah, and I'd just like to build on that further. I think this notion of actually intentionally going after really tough, highly regulated areas is something that people are doing very intentionally. I know that so Brett Taylor, who's the CEO of Sierra, which is really focused on customer service, they've explicitly gone after highly regulated industries like financial services and insurance and healthcare. And part of their thinking is that once they get in there, we all know how challenging it is to actually be dislodged and for other folks to penetrate and disruptors to get in there. I think the other commonality that I've seen is oftentimes, and this was alluded to, the technology is one piece, but when you're actually like a critical piece of an operational workflow that is actually also spanning multiple departments that historically has been very challenging from a collaboration perspective, I think that also can be something that keeps you entrenched for a very long time. So, compliance is a big thing within highly regulated industries, and insurance is no exception. And there's a startup that, I became familiar with called Norm.ai. They had subject matter expert that had been dealing with compliance for a long period of time and adherence to the law and leveraging, LLMs and these technologies in that space. And they really went after that problem and just really attacked it very explicitly. And unpacked, and I think very cleverly we're able to then take subject matter expertise, embed in their platform, and then really solve a problem and do things that couldn't be done before from a compliance perspective. So I think like there's a lot of like challenge on the front end, but once they cross that chasm, then they're really hard to dislodge.
Say one other point that I'll add to that, and something that we worry about is honestly the large language models and the generalist firms knocking out the AI software companies and otherwise. And so we found that it's really important, and it's especially so in the software space at this point in AI, to make sure that the companies that you are investing in have a very specific domain, they have a unique product, a specific design, so that it will be harder for them to be disrupted by the generalists that are out there. And maybe those generalists buy them in the end, as opposed to just try to taking them out and recreating the same product at a cheaper price just because of their size and scale.
Yeah.
There's a consistent message of wanting regulated entities, wanting system of records, because the horizontal engagement stuff is going to get disrupted. That makes a lot of sense, but it also would seem like there's an opportunity to that area that's about to be disrupted, which is horizontal engagement layer. Is there a focus on, I don't want to invest in the incumbents there, but actually, if that area is being disrupted, is that area also the area of biggest opportunity? And is there an opportunity to say, look, the next Salesforce or the next horizontal thing, that's where the opportunity to steal a lot of share is. Is that interesting? Why isn't it? I just don't hear a lot about people saying, I want to invest in a horizontal engagement tool.
Yeah.
And why not?
I think it's a great question. I'll give you my personal perspective on it because it's something we've thought about a lot. I think it could be a really good opportunity. I think it comes with a lot of risk, I think. And the example I'll give is like Anthropic from week to week will pick what kind of industry or type of tool they want to go after. Like they made a big splash in kind of legal, even if it was kind of a general horizontal legal solution, right, for all sorts of things. And so we've only hesitated. I think it could be a big opportunity, and perhaps we're missing some of that. But we've only hesitated because I think we're so early days in what these, the Anthropics, the OpenAIs of the world are going after, that it could be easy for them to kind of create those same horizontal tools. They may not, right? They might decide at the end of the day that, rather than have that arms race, we just want to be the good base LLM that will let people build on top of, like the Apple App Store, right? Yeah. And we're just not going to go after that. But so far, they've kind of shown a desire to, get a little more specialized in certain subsectors and in industries and solutions. So to us, the only way I can answer your question, it's not a good answer, is like, it's just the unknown of it. It's so early days, it's moving so quickly. We haven't been willing yet to kind of take that risk, not knowing where some of those guys are going to go after and where they're going to invest.
Yeah, what I sometimes say is there's a lot of ways to make money. And so we go and raise capital from our investors behind a certain strategy. Similar to what Alex said, we are not investing in earlier stage businesses. So our businesses have a certain risk profile. And we are trying to manage our business to certain loss ratios. So that stage is too early. The interesting thing ultimately is my personal view is there's a lot of FUD around what's going to happen and how it's going to happen. Ultimately, it's going to be the efficiency, the cost, and the ease of any solution that's going to determine what solution is a winner. And right now, there is so much uncertainty around all those vectors as it relates to AI, because people really don't know. Cost is being subsidized completely. What will be the long-term cost? How will the workflows evolve? So people think about ease, and then how do you integrate into the workflow of companies and have the right harnesses and orchestration in place so that the workflows become easier? All of that is totally open season and wild, wild west. And so it's just early for us to really say who will be the winner. We are investing typically in companies that have a product market fit, and there's some real evidence of that. And it's just too early right now for that.
Yeah, I think it comes down to, risk appetite, because I think to your point, that is like the primary battlefield right now. And I think like Satya Nadella pointed this out, I think over a year ago. I think he foresaw this notion of like a horizontal intelligence layer that spans like your Oracle, your Salesforce, your whatever, that spans all these more verticalized applications. And so, Anthropic, OpenAI, they have like Codex, they have Cowork, these other tools that they're intending to be like the UI and the front face for a knowledge worker to interface with all of these systems. The hyperscalers are trying to do it. Obviously, Microsoft is trying to do it as well. So that is I think the primary battlefield for sure. And so it's going to be really hard to pick a winner. And every company is, I think, battling with that, because that is truly going to be a lock-in. That as an operator, when you make that strategic partnership decision, you're going to be in bed with that company for quite some time, and they will be like the interface for all your other systems.
How are you guys thinking about, for your portfolio companies, customers, how the buy versus build decision is changing? And I'm specifically worried about the Starbucks announcement on the weekend where they're assessing $400 million of their software spend and trying to figure out if they could go and build their solutions internally. And it's going a lot on my mind. I'm curious to hear how you guys made that.
And I can start. I think what we are seeing right now, so we first of all are very focused on enterprise, and Starbucks is obviously a classic example of that. Where we are seeing that pressure come into play is mostly on existing software companies' ability on the pricing side. So, you think about, most people are still not saying we're going to take an enterprise-grade software solution out and just go and home build something, because to make sure it's secure, to make sure it has all the compliance requirements, all the corner cases are figured out, ultimately it's hard. It's very hard for an enterprise to build that. Now, there are some use cases where you'll be able to build it or use, but for the most part. But what it does do is give the CIOs a chip and say, you know what? I'm not going to pay for the 5% price increase that and because I have the ability and I'm going to try this. So I think that's where it's showing up right now. But there are a lot of tools that are out there, and you hear from people. I was talking to, I'm not going to name the company, but a friend who's the CEO of a company, and he was like, oh, we have this skunkworks CRM system we are building internally, and it seems very good. But I think whether that scales to something where you have a 2,000, 3,000 person sales force and you're trying to manage that, that's the question. And it's too early to tell.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I do think you bring up the good point of enterprise versus SMB, right? You can kind of vibe code and kind of build some of these solutions. If you're a scrappy SMB, you might not need, the whole complicated solution. You don't have international operations, other things, the same level of compliance and the like. And so we never have spent a lot of time in that SMB market, but we are seeing a little bit more disruption there, a little bit more churn there. And now that could change over time, right? As some of these get more sophisticated and some of the AI models. But we have seen a big difference in SMB, versus enterprise. And I would say the other thing, I won't mention the company. We're thinking about this at our companies because we're software companies, we're technology companies, but we also purchase a lot of software, right? And I won't name the company, but there's a piece of customer success software that, was doing some pretty interesting things for us, but we now have built our own solution that's actually a lot more comprehensive. It's seeing signals from, the sales model, the customer success reps, how often the customers are using the software. And so we've actually used AI to essentially build our own solution that's more powerful than the software we were buying. We haven't let go of it yet. It still does a couple things, but we probably will, right? So, and I think that it's an enterprise software company. And so it is interesting to kind of see too at our software companies, the different pieces of software that we're, essentially going to replace. And then the other thing that I touch on the pricing is the other pressure. It's not just the price increases, it's the whole per seat model. I think that will fundamentally change over time because all of our customers on the software side, they're getting more efficient with AI, right? So they've got less seats and they're going to want, not just less price increases, they want price decreases. And so one of the things that we're thinking through a lot is more value-based pricing. What is the kind of software and technology pricing model shift to? So I think AI is going to create a fundamental shift too, and the technology that does stick around and is able to still show a lot of value, it might not be priced on a seat basis anymore depending on the solution. It could be based on something else.
Yeah, I worry about the tokenized model in the long term. So as an organization, as we think about how we're going to right-size our organization and make it more efficient, we've talked around our ops group, and we're only a 550-person firm. We have 350 ops people, and there's been talk, well, in a couple of years, we'll need 100 of them. And maybe that's true. We certainly won't need as many that we have, but the cost of utilizing the AI tools is going to go up. So the savings that you think you're going to get, you're going to have this really interesting supply-demand problem where you have now replaced a bunch of your people with the idea that AI is going to replace them, but you're not getting the cost savings that you saw before, and you're a little bit stuck where those people have either moved on or you're going to have to retrain them to bring them up to speed. And I'm actually not sure where that lands in the long term, but it's a real concern that we have.
There's a lot of uncertainty now, right? A lot more now around a lot of the things that drive valuation of a software company, or pricing power, basis of differentiation. We're struggling, I'm a software investor, we're struggling with we're multiple of these 4, 5, 6 years from now, and we're agricultural businesses. Like, how are you guys thinking about exit multiples, and how is that affecting the underwriting, the pricing of these businesses? There's a lot of things to like you sort of, I don't know, nervous about or unsure about.
I agree with you. I think pricing risk in this market is, I've been doing this 25 years, it's been the hardest. Because on one side, you have business models that, there's hot companies that are too hot and the pricing is out of the world, and then there are cold companies that are too cold. And because of the same thing, people are debating whether there's any terminal value in these companies. What happened historically was you take software companies, the reason they were so highly valued was because they were perceived to be low risk and high optionality, right? All the beneficiary of automation was going to, right? And now what happened is the optionality around upside is they're sharing it with AI companies. And now downside risk is there because people are seeing there's potential disruption. What we are doing is, first of all, running potential new investments through this framework to say, okay, we believe that there'll be terminal value in these businesses. And then how do we think about exit multiples, really going back to basic corporate finance more than saying on a relative basis, because ultimately sometimes the world is, software businesses should trade for X times ARR or Y times EBITDA, rather than thinking about that, saying, okay, if this is a good company, it's going to grow at X% and will have this much margins at exit. On a basic corporate finance basis, how should we think about exit multiples? And it doesn't matter whether we are investing at 18 times or 20 times or 24 times EBITDA, how do we think about that? And what that has implicitly resulted in is significantly lower exit multiple assumptions in our models today than a few years ago.
Yeah, I would agree. I was going to say we've been much more conservative, frankly, around, and listen, we've lost some deals because of that, right? But especially in kind of the early days of some of this disruption and AI disruption, but we've, I think, similarly been much more conservative around that. And I think we've probably heightened one of our key kind of investment theses and things going in, which is multiple ways to win, right? You take a software company, a lot of investors, and we've been fortunate of it too. To your point, there's been a lot of multiple expansion over the years. Now, so more than ever, we are starting to model in maybe even a little contraction, being conservative on exit, but being more confident in the multiple ways to win, whether it's growth, whether it's margin expansion, M&A, being able to kind of pull more levers. I think it goes towards having the right operational folks, frankly, by our side as well, so that we're underwriting much more of that today and making sure before we make an investment that that's something we can pull off and do, versus before it might have been more in your upside case, right? And so now I think there's just a tighter focus on our underwriting around the multiple ways to win to offset some of that risk. But we're eliminating some of it by we don't have the same exit multiple assumption we did 5 years ago or even 2 or 3 years ago.
To what extent are you guys kind of like monitoring what Benioff is doing in trying to react to this? So I think he's been proactive about things like having like a headless CRM where it's more of like a token cost consumption based model, and obviously that makes it challenging to underwrite and forecast. But it seems like just like we have to forecast for cloud, just like we have to forecast for other like variable technology costs, it's hard not to see that kind of going in that way. And there's some people that have a thesis that there's actually be more usage of these systems of record because now agentic, workflows that are working 24/7, they're not just 9 to 5, like, the human seats that previously used them might actually lead to more consumption. Is that something that you guys?
Well, we are, and frankly, a lot of, when we are talking to end customers, this is where the pricing model is a bit of a debate.
Yeah.
Because on one side, value-based and consumption-based pricing is the thing customers want to move to, but when the vendors lose the predictability, the customers lose the predictability as well. So how do you budget how much you're going to spend on the software? So I think that's where the trickiness of this whole pricing model discussion is, which is both parties want predictability. You want ARR predictability, but customers want spend predictability. And I think it's tricky on both sides, and our software companies are obviously using tokens, so then there's a budget side of things. So that's why it's all very tricky right now. And then obviously, all the costs are being subsidized right now. So you may sign up to something today, you don't even know what costs are going to be 3 years down the line, 4 years down the line.
Yeah,
so that's why it's a very hard question.
Super hard, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, to that point, how are you guys thinking about the inevitable price hike
Yeah, well, I would, yeah, the biggest way when we talk about it all the time, because I think it's a big risk. I mean, it's the same thing all of us as consumers, right? You're like trained to go to Amazon to shop because you're like, oh, everything's cheaper on Amazon. But last I checked, it's like half of the stuff's probably cheaper at Target down the street, right? And you're kind of, and I think it's the same thing where all the employees at all these companies now are just trained to like, oh, we'll just use AI for everything, and the cost can get out of control. And I think there will be a point at which, when it's not subsidized by all these VC rounds and the billions of dollars that are flowing into it, they're going to want to make money, right? At the end of the day, going back to classic corporate finance, it's like they got to, create cash flow. And so I do think it's inevitable. I think one of the big ways that, we're trying to mitigate for that is, one, a lot of training internally at our companies in terms of how to do these queries and use AI most efficiently. And, for example, there could be 10 employees, there could be 100 employees that are asking it the same thing. And you can kind of create context for an organization so that it doesn't need to kind of do that work. That's a simple example, but like we're doing a lot of training at the companies in order to kind of just make their usage more efficient. And I'd say the other thing that we're doing is really pushing companies to kind of use AI in a way that's agnostic to the underlying LLM, in that if we needed to switch from Anthropic to OpenAI tomorrow, it wouldn't be a huge disruption in the company. And it's not just pricing, it's just, hey, does one of them go away at some point? It could, right? It's not unreasonable to think there's going to be winners and losers in this space. So I think it's just efficient use, really training employees when you should be using it, when should you maybe not be using it, give it the context to be more efficient. But importantly too, don't become overly reliant on one model. You got to be able to kind of, be flexible.
Yeah, no, I think that I always try to remind myself that we're so early in this exponential curve. It's so similar to like the early days of the internet. And a lot of like the scaffolding that is going to mature will actually help us with this. So like obviously open source is a big deal. We all remember the DeepSeek moment and how it affected the market. And open source has continued to be basically 6 months lagging from a capabilities perspective at, fractions of a price. And so I think we're going to get more nuanced and smart about how we set up workflows. Sometimes you might just need to like have maybe like the manager of the workflow be really intelligent, but then maybe delegate that to a less expensive model for that specific subset of the task. And so that scaffolding is going to get more mature. It's already happening now. And to the point of like interoperability, I think we've seen, once, the administration cut off access to Fable, they're now going to be controlling access to other frontier models. I think that was a wake-up call for everyone, particularly like sovereign AI for foreign countries, and then also for every single company. They need to have provenance over their ability to reroute things exactly like you described. So I think more and more companies are going to build that layer in order to make that happen.
I think Don's quite right. I think that most of our organizations are now just throwing out AI and having people try it and then bringing together focus groups to discuss, okay, how are we using this thing? What is the smarter way to use it? How is it integrating within our systems in the right way? But over time, you're right, whether it's because certain ones go away, or just because we realize you don't need all of that power and people have figured out how to do things smarter, you will take a little bit of a reliance from a cost perspective away.
One paradigm I've seen is like for innovation and experimentation, actually use the best model because it'll let you understand and stretch for the art of the possible. But when you productionalize workflows, then you have a more discrete understanding of what's needed, then you can actually go to the cheaper models.
The other way to think about it is you don't need generative AI for everything.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right now, you do a simple thing and you're wasting a lot of compute. We all are wasting a lot of compute today by putting a little query into, Claude to do so same thing. We're using a Ferrari where we could use a Prius, right? And so ultimately it got scared. And that's why I think some of the software business models that have figured out, I invest in a lot of engineering software businesses. And there's a lot of question on, okay, will this? But if it's a simple physics problem that a software has already figured out how to do it on an efficient basis, and the LLM is not going to come up with a better answer and a cheaper answer, why would somebody use an LLM to come up with a more expensive and less good answer?
All right, Bill, I think you had a question. And then
So on the efficiency, regular software businesses that you all invest in, the AI tools that are that are now table stakes. We talked about this last year with Alan. It's like, 2024 was like a year of the AI efficiency tools. Then 25 was sort of building your product. Towards it, now that they've been around for about 3 years, are you seeing margin improvement in your software, even though margin improvement in your software businesses because of these tools? Question number one. And then I guess the follow-up is, if anybody has any comments on the Palantir CEO kind of said, I'm paraphrasing, but enterprise CEOs are sort of not very happy with how well AI is working, and no one really wants to talk about that. Maybe based on where we were a year ago, or maybe even JFF when the world changed, how is your perspective of how far things are actually working versus, is it taking longer, or you think it's actually working in a way that you expected, given this is unknown? There's two questions.
We are not seeing EBITDA margin improvements from companies that are even deploying it at scale, because what's the efficiency gains are actually going into producing more product and producing AI products. So they're doing a lot more, but the efficiency gains are not showing up in EBITDA margins, at least for most of our companies. And that's because right now, in this period of uncertainty, the idea is not take the dollars and try to optimize it, really try and make sure that the companies are positioned for success in the future. So the product life cycles have shrunk a lot. So if you have 1,000 engineers, now you're doing the work of 1,500 engineers using AI, but you have not increased your engineering workforce by 500 people. So that's more what we have seen so far. Now, maybe in the future things change, but at least on the operations side, more of the efficiency gains are showing up in just more work happening as opposed to margins improving. In terms of the product side of things, at least what we are seeing is a lot of our companies, existing software companies who have introduced AI products, the adoption is slow. The sales cycles are longer because customers still are not sure. What do they want? How do they want? The approval cycles, if you stamp AI in your product, the approval cycle internally within a customer base is longer just because they have their GC is like, oh, this is an AI product. Now I need to get through all of that. So that's what at least we are seeing now. It's a very short time period right now, so I don't want to extrapolate too much from that, but that's at least what we are seeing.
We're growth investors, so we have a very similar approach in terms of we've actually told our companies we don't expect in the near term EBITDA margins to expand, but we want you to do more with the same, right? And so we're not hiring as many net new developers in life.
We're seeing modest, margin expansion. Customer service side. Yeah, I would say right now we're building all the tools, but we want to make sure they work. And customer service is so critical that the last thing we want to do is start making it a bunch more efficient from an employee headcount perspective. So we've probably got duplicative costs though. Like if the system we're building on this retention kind of customer service, customer success organization works as we think it will, I think the opportunity is there. But I think we'd rather kind of over-invest now, in order to kind of continue the growth in both product and customer service. I think it will get there. Like I think in 2 years from now, I would say 2-3 years, I would expect margins to expand. We just haven't pushed our companies to kind of do that. It's possible to do in the near term, but we'd rather kind of invest and see the growth.
I was just going to jump in on the second point with respect to Alex Karp's comment and explicitly how CEOs feel maybe a little disillusioned with respect to the ROI. And I know this firsthand from my personal experience as well as like peers of mine and other CDOs and other verticals. And I think when we first started this, a lot of the focus has been on cost takeout and efficiency gains, which is essentially expense reduction. I think the aspiration of most CEOs and boards are pressuring this way is actually on the value creation side. And I think the challenge with that is that actually requires pretty significant like cultural workflow changes. And that's hard for a lot of these like older enterprises. That's so baked into the DNA of the people and the way they've done things. It's classic innovator's dilemma. So I think that's just a longer tail. And I still go back to like, we're still early in this. The analogy I like to think about is like when electricity first came out and you had to, change the way you did things with it. Like the first phase in factories is they just replaced gas lighting with electric lighting. The second phase when they actually like started to rewire the way factories operated, like workflow change. Then ultimately they would completely redesign the factory. And I feel like right now we're still in like phase one where we're just like deploying, Microsoft Copilot to all of our folks and we think like magic's gonna happen. But it's not until we do this like more challenging like workflow optimization and complete like business reimagination. And that's a lot harder.
We actually met with an interesting group who is coming at AI from a slightly different direction. They're still too early and they're focused on larger companies, but their whole business model, their operators who are going to go in, it's fund, and they're going to implement AI at these companies in the right way over a couple year period. And I think you're going to find, once the dust settles a little bit more and you're going to have your winners and the LLMs that people are going to use, I think then you're going to have more of those folks coming in and there's going to be businesses all centered around going in, especially on the smaller end of the market. We invest in tons of founder and family run businesses, right? They're not using AI, or if they are, they're using chat on their CPUs, right? So they're not there yet, but they need somebody to help guide them. And I think that those people are going to develop and there'll be a whole industry around that, a couple of years from now.
Yeah. That's kind of like the whole forward deployed engineer thing, but like it's a fancy term, but at the end of the day, it's someone that helps the business reimagine things with these tools.
John, did you have a question?
Yeah. I imagine you have to think about this when you make investments. the frontier models, their capabilities have improved dramatically year over year. Where are we on that journey? Do you think we're 50% of the way there, 90? Like, are we reaching the point of diminishing return? That's the first. And the second is how you're thinking about more broadly, like labor disruption. Do you think 5 years from now, the labor market will look very different than it does now? Do you think unemployment will be different? Do you think there'll be more startup? Like, what do you think the world looks like?
Both fun questions.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll tackle it like a first shot at it. Like from the perspective of everything that I've seen, it seems like the rate of the advancement in capabilities has not been receding at all. There's like this linear relationship between compute and intelligence capabilities, and they've started to measure like the length of time like an agent can like do work. This metric called like METR, and it's continued to just progress as it always has. And I think maybe the main headwind is going to be power. Everyone keeps talking about like data centers and power and energy and the amount of gigawatts that are going to be required if we continue on this path. But certainly I think, compute, power, those are the things that are probably going to be the biggest headwinds that impede and start to maybe have us taper off. But then again, like maybe if you believe some folks, once AI starts like doing the research itself and coding itself, perhaps there'll be like an architectural breakthrough that, helps us break through that. So we'll see. With respect to like the future, I think it's like every other like big, technological advance, there is going to be workforce disruption. We see it now. I think one thing that I've been doing recently is volunteering for a nonprofit because right now we're seeing like the worst unemployment rate for new grads in the last 40 years. I think we've all seen that people don't hire early career professionals. And I think that's, we're seeing it right now in real time. And there's certain functional areas that are being impacted as well. But I think it'll be a net job creator. There's tons of jobs that didn't exist before. But there are some fields that are just going to get, significantly disrupted.
Yeah, I agree with that. If you look at the graduation, it's actually shocking. If you look at some of the top business schools in the country and the amount of folks in what's we can't call it a stable economy right now. There's a lot of disruption and things going on, but like what should be an okay, economy for folks with an MBA coming from some of these top schools. I mean, it's at a very low level of employment and especially colleges, some of the entry level jobs. And so we're already seeing, I think, a lot of disruption, but I agree with Don's point where like the jobs will shift, right? And I think the biggest thing that I wrestle with personally is like, everybody in this room, you've been doing what you now do for long enough where you had the base training where you can now go leverage AI and you know enough and you have enough context to know when it's wrong, right? And you call it out and it's like, oh, I'm sorry, I missed that. And so I think we're probably as an economy overreacting and getting rid of some of these entry-level jobs that like, you need the people that understand the context eventually to leverage the AI. So I think we're probably overcorrecting on efficiency at those entry-level jobs when really you should probably invest in those resources, even if you don't technically need them, so they can learn the context, do it the old-fashioned way, and then leverage the AI. You need less of them. You don't need as many as you had. But I do worry about the overcorrection of the job thing, because we're already seeing it. And I just don't know what that looks like 5-10 years from now when all of a sudden you've got people, if the AI doesn't keep up, and maybe it'll just make way less mistakes, I don't know. I'm not confident in that. I still think you need people that understand the context. That's a scary world, where all of a sudden you've got an untrained workforce that's using the AI and doesn't know the right questions to ask it or the context or how to spot an error. I think that's like a fascinating piece of all of this that doesn't get talked about enough.
I wonder very much who's going to become us with all these people, these junior people not there anymore, because at some time I want to retire. I'm assuming you guys do too, right? And then I don't know where those younger people who should be training now are going to come up. I think jobs will shift quite dramatically, as Don suggested, over time, and AI will create enough new opportunities. I imagine this is probably what our parents' generation felt when computers first came on, like, oh my God, now I don't need my assistants aren't needed anymore. I don't need this or anything. It just will all just change and evolve over time. I agree with the overcorrection comment though, because I think that's where we are today.
I follow on that. Have you seen any signals that companies are starting to think about, how do we actually train? How do we bring some people in to be able to hand over the baton to that, to teach them enough so that when they then utilize what AI. One of the data points I found was that if you look back 2-3 years, you have graduates coming out who had no AI experience. They were dropped fairly quickly when things started moving. But now there are graduates coming up with AI experience that can apply it. And I hear, at least through the grapevine, people are really liking that. And they're saying that they can really be helpful in enterprise and grow it. So in a way, I feel like the new ones that have it ingrained seems to be able to be absorbed and picked up. But do you see that in your companies you invest in or in the market that you look at?
The signals actually I'm seeing, I helped with some, I'm on the advisory council with my college that I went to, and then I have 2 high schoolers. And I think how the high school and really talking to how they are thinking about education, and I think you're right, that's the signals you're seeing, the workflow that young people now are trying to incorporate. Their workflow is very different. The way they are learning, the way they are incorporating AI into their workflow, and teachers are trying to figure out, colleges are trying to figure out, how should you incorporate AI so that people can be AI facile, but at the same time then operate at the next higher level so that you are not reinventing the wheel. I think those are the signals we are seeing. I think in our companies, I think the tricky part right now, someone alluded to earlier, is that it's just the workflows are still archaic or non-AI, so that takes time because you're the VP of engineering and then you have and so that whole workflow, people are trying to change that, but in an enterprise setting, that's a much longer journey. So I think it'll start shifting, earlier on and then over time. That's why more jobs will be created, because people hopefully will be able to figure out how they can use AI as a tool and then become more and more efficient and do more things that were not jobs previously. Like there just will be new careers that will be created.
JT, the world's favorite banker.
I had one of the big topics we're hearing is just around financing markets, right? And so obviously you guys are in the business of buying companies, but there's a big variable that maybe 2 or 3 years ago wasn't really on the table, and nobody wants to lend. And so I guess maybe from your perspective, what do you think is going to get either the BSL market or the direct lending market back to supporting the software/AI ecosystem, and how long do you think it's going to take?
Yeah, I think we've already seen a bit of a correction just towards, but the lenders are being very careful. Like they now will lend to the A+, A assets, right? And so at first there was like a big pause where it was like everything that was going on with Blue Owl and others and portfolios were going, it was like, whoa, we're never gonna lend to software again, right? We're just not gonna do it. And like, obviously that wasn't gonna stick. And so we've already seen some of that release. I would say there's kind of now the haves and have-nots, where I think for the really quality, we talked about it earlier in terms of which of these companies are kind of well insulated from the risks. I think we are seeing it done now. Leverage levels, do they look the same as they did 2 years ago? Absolutely not. Does the pricing look the same? Absolutely not, right? So I think they are baking some of the inherent risk into these deals, but you can get them done. I think where there's going to continue to be a void is kind of the, B+ and lower assets. Like those are hard to finance, and it depends on the size. The smaller ones we've seen, like you can go out and find some financing. You got to be a little bit more creative. But I think where we're still seeing, kind of the largest disruption is for the scaled assets, the really big deals. Like it's very, very tough right now. And I think it will begin to normalize. I don't know when, but like there is a difference in terms of asset quality and just a flat no to some certain assets. But then even for quality assets that are large, like the lenders are being cautious.
And as I said, pricing risk is hard. If pricing risk is hard for equity investors, then the debt investors don't know what the enterprise value is, then it becomes really hard to say, okay, how much debt should you put? So I think it's just right now we are in probably the thickest cloud phase of this whole evolution. And as things start becoming a little clearer, we'll start seeing more clarity. That's why smaller deals are easier to get done than bigger deals, because it's not that. And then a lot of lenders are sitting on a lot of software exposure to begin with. So they're trying to figure out what to do with their portfolios before trying to put new things in the ground.
And they're getting a lot of questions from their investors of how is the portfolio holding up? And frankly, I don't think they can answer with a straight face yet. So I 100% agree with that. They're getting their house in order. They need to be able to, with confidence, this is what's going on in our portfolio before they start adding new things to the mix, right? And that'll probably take 2-3 years to fully sort out for some of those guys that have huge, huge portfolios.
What happens to those B+ assets? Are you guys, is there fear of a credit wall? Is it a wall? What's the...
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you what, I think what happens to some of them, like we've been more aggressive on add-on M&A for our portfolio companies. We're actually also at a very interesting time because there were so many deals that got done in like 21, 22, that kind of post-COVID era where there was just like a boom in deal activity, financing markets were red hot, people were kind of given, there was kind of very aggressive terms, very aggressive leverage, high prices, where kind of all those debt maturities are coming due over the next year or two, right? And so our view has been, hey, with our big platforms that are stable, we should be more opportunistic around add-on M&A because they might not be able to, one, sell that company, in a regular way platform to a new sponsor, and two, they might not be able to refinance their debt if they want to do that because the lenders are risk off, right? There used to be easy to go and say, hey, we want another couple years, we want to do an amend and extend type of thing. Like lenders, they're to your question and point, they're not as open to that anymore. And so I think you're going to see more consolidation in the industry. And I think that's to the benefit of our current portfolio companies is we should be able to find some pretty interesting situations to kind of bail them out of that. They're good, they're quality companies, some of those, but they're just stuck in a weird place. So I am optimistic around that creating opportunities for our current portfolio as well.
I do have some rapid fire questions. These are all softballs. And then we're going to take a break and we'll do the next panel. So you all work for exceptional firms. At Growth Cap, we're always looking at firms and analyzing them and trying to see what makes them good firms and can stand the test of time and continue to succeed. Can you share insights about each of your firms? What is the leadership and culture like?
I guess I can start. The culture is so important for an organization to survive properly, and it really has to start all the way at the top. And listen, paying people will obviously make people happy and will keep them for so long, but in order to maintain your talent and really try to build a bigger, better business, you have to have people buy into what you're doing and feel a part of what the decision making is ultimately. We're still pretty small, right? We're only 500 people, and so you can have more of a group think around how you do things, but you have to involve a broader set of people around the organization so that they are bought into it, and that's how you keep your younger people too, who, up until the last couple of years when the market has frozen a bit more, were just jumping ship to whatever they thought the next best opportunity was, and the grass was always greener, and they learned that it actually wasn't. Holy crap, I'm at this place now, and these people are awful. Yeah, they're paying me more, but and now I'm stuck because the job market has frozen. So it's very, very important to make sure, and this I think resonates down into the funds you invest with, the companies you invest with, is making sure you instill that right culture. And while that's a softer part of the business, I think it's a really important one.
Yeah, for us, TA has been around for almost 60 years for multiple generational transitions at the firm. And I think culture is at the top of it. But it's really the system in place. We have a very meritocratic system, very black and white system in some place where people really understand what does it take to get promoted. The comp system is very transparent. People understand how that works. And then there is a system of how people get promoted and then how people retire. So that really gets people know that once they do this, it's a private partnership, so we have not sold a stake to anybody, and so people, when you are in the seat, you have the economics. As soon as you leave, you don't have the economics. I get the benefit of the economics and I'm in the seat, but then I got it at book value, and I'm going to give it at book value to the next generation. And that mindset really creates opportunity for the younger folks coming up. There's no free lunch, and then everybody really understands what it takes to succeed.
Yeah, I think for us, it's similarly, it's a very performance-based culture. And so, but at the same time, I think what's really allowed us to stick around and have folks excited to kind of continue at MVP is it's always been very much an apprenticeship model. And so if you look at, kind of our most senior folks that we've got that are leading our three teams, myself included, we all started off as I'd say 90% were associates at the firm, kind of our entry-level positions, right? And so for us, it has been mission critical. And it's actually ironic as you think about AI, because I sit there every day and I'm like, should I ask an associate to do this, or should I just put this in the cloud? Right? And so we're constantly forcing ourselves to kind of keep that apprenticeship model going. How can we continue to kind of train our associates, our VPs, directors to kind of keep that continuity in the firm? Because that's kind of how we've been successful, is really investing a ton into our people. And I do think AI is a little bit of a risk to that, like we've been talking about. And so we're just very intentional around that. And I'd say the only other thing I'd add is also when we're doing that training, I think a lot of it is around, there's a lot of capital out there, there's a lot of private equity firms. We're very intentional in instilling kind of our values and how we partner with founders, with management teams, and with companies, so that we continue to have a differentiation in the marketplace to be viewed as a value-add partner, to folks, because at the end of the day, people have unlimited options now in terms of who they can sell their business to, who they want to partner with. So as we're doing that apprenticeship, it's not just how do you make good investments, how do you do that, but how do you interact with these teams? How do you add value? How do you show that you're a good partner? But it's really, it's a people business at the end of the day. So that's, investing in our people and keeping that apprenticeship model up is how we've been able to do it.
Yeah, I'm not an employee of ICONIQ, but I'm an advisor, so my observations are kind of in that lens. But probably the three things I've observed that are the main characteristics are there's a lot of humility, there's always a desire to get better, and there's like a high degree of teamwork. From a humility perspective, they've had a lot of investment success with companies like Datadog, Snowflake, and now Anthropic, but they're very intentional about talking to folks out in industry. So they have a technical advisory board of former CTOs and engineering leaders from startups. Of course, they have the AI and data kind of advisory board. They have CIOs from Fortune 100s as well. So they're always trying to get perspective for folks on the ground that are leveraging these portfolio companies. With respect to always wanting to get better, I think they take to heart that they're trying to invest in these leading edge companies like Anthropic, and they want to have the street cred and hands-on understanding of these investments. And so really being sure to be at the front edge of adopting these technologies has been a big one. And from a teamwork perspective, I've been engaged with a lot of VC firms, and oftentimes it can be very cutthroat. But I've observed that there's a lot of just a collaboration in the firm, so it's been great to work with them.
Excellent. Okay, last question, unless anyone else has a question. A person who has influenced you the most.
That's a hard one, actually. You know what, actually, there's, when I first started I've only worked at 2 organizations, and which is crazy. I've been at 20 years now at Grosvenor and Credit Suisse before that. But there was I was going to be a litigator, and there was an attorney who took me in at the beginning. I saw what litigators did at big law firms, and it kind of stinks for several years, doing depositions and the like. And he brought me over to the private equity side, and he is now since retired. He's in his 80s, and he's still somebody who I seek counsel from. And he really helped guide my career in the right way. I guess maybe I was a little bit lucky and kind of fell into my lap, but he put in the time, and I certainly paid benefits to him in terms of the work that I put in. But that's been really my greatest influence.
For me, it's my grandfather. He was essentially my father. Despite all the hardships we had during a childhood, he was the one who taught me skate to where the puck is going to be. You play the hand you're dealt with and play it in the best way. And I think that's what's helped me throughout my life in any situation.
Yeah, sticking with the theme of family, for me, it would definitely be my mother. She was actually very early. She was kind of one of the first founders of a female VC firm, and she was investing in women, minority-owned businesses, things like that. So she kind of got my passion in investing, but also taught me a lot in terms of just, the harder you work, the luckier you get, things like that. So she just instilled a lot of that into me, and so has always been a role model for me in investing, and really the reason I kind of chose this career path.
I'm glad I'm not the only one. So I was going to say my parents, both my mom and dad are Vietnam War refugees, and so they came in 1975. They had 2 hours notice to get on a plane to come to the United States, just stuffed what they could in a duffel bag and started here with nothing. So whenever I think things are hard, I'm like, I have it way easier than they ever did. So they're my inspiration too.
Well, thank you again to our first panelists. A round of applause. Thank you.